I would say Sally and Bunny because they seem to be like the more useful, like in battle, because I don't remember Boomer. I mean, Rotor. Rotor did just like the technical junk, and of course Antoine. We kind of established he was there to be there, but and Antoine was there too. That kind of thing. But Sally was smarter, braver. Goes into the missions. She had Nicole, the computer, with her, and Bunny Rabbit had the super strength. She would like bust open doors and break down walls or whatever. So I like those two and their attitudes and everything. Like you
I
said, again, not counting Sonic and Tails.
I always liked I always really liked Bunny, honestly, because I liked how she was I mean I liked her backstory for her and then you know how much it affected her and how more was an emotional thing and I kind of like those emotionally driven type of storyline type character things. So I was really drawn to that.
Mm. Did you have a
Yeah,
And
favorite,
it,
Johnny?
I
but I
read
always was oh
shows.
Oh.
Oh, um,
Oh, I was also going to say, one thing that was mentioned earlier, one thing I did kind of dislike was the fact that Tails couldn't do much because for me personally, Tails is one of my all-time favorite video game characters and Sonic characters, period, even at the time. So I wish they could have had the opportunity to do more with him. But
yeah.
I do remember the episodes where he said he was tired of not the episode where he was saying he was tired of being like, the tag along, the little
Yeah.
brother type and he wanted to do stuff more.
He
And I
would
remember I
he
really
would have had
liked
more
those
initiative.
episodes.
He would have had a little more
Yeah.
initiative if the show kept going, but
Yeah. I kind of figured that, especially with the cliffhanger, said, well, it'd probably be more. And, it's been waiting for my season 3 and
they shined him up.
yeah.
They shined him up in little ways, like in the episode where they send the Sally robot to infiltrate. He's the only one who recognizes it's not really her. And then they don't believe him, of course, but because he was the first one to notice anything, that becomes useful later on, and helps turn the tide in their favor. So it's a little thing, but it's a pivotal thing. They were good at doing that. Like even if they couldn't put one of the secondary characters front and center, they would find a way to have them still intercede in a pivotal way at a pivotal time, so as they wouldn't just be there in the background. So even little things like that, I was always happy to see.
Mm.
And yeah, Buddy was cool too. She was also good at martial arts. That was the
Mm.
thing that came in handy. Uh, yeah, she ended up in the comic. Her and Antoine ended up getting married, so that was cool. I think in the comic, canonically, they're a couple years older than the other ones. So I think they're like supposed to be 18 or 19 and everybody else is like 16, 17. But
Mm.
yeah, so they ended up getting married. For me, Sally was definitely my favorite character. Ended up being my favorite character in the whole franchise, honestly. Between the show and the comic book, if you read all that shit, it starts to really stand out that she's just a really more dynamically written character than anybody else. At some point, the writers really fell in love with her, and they're like, let's give her all the depth. Sonic still gets all the action stuff to do, but he's a very static, unchanging character. He is who he is. Um, he's got attitude, and he's the
Mm.
fastest thing alive. That's pretty much it. That's all there is to him. But it's his show, but he's not necessarily the most interesting going on. So she's always got the most going on, and she's always the most competent one. So it always ends up working in her favor. So she really won me over as a character who was created to just be the girlfriend initially. For her to become elevated to a case where a lot of people make the case that a lot of people think she's the most interesting character in the franchise. It's not just me. A lot of people think she's actually the most dynamic one. And to not even be a game character, that's no mean feat either. But yeah, so she would have been my favorite for sure. Like I said, I got the Genesis hack. I actually got the cartridge with the case and everything, the Sonic 1 mod hack. Where you
Oh
play
yeah,
Sally.
they had Princess Sally instead of like Sonic as a playable character.
Yeah.
How much did that cost?
Oh God, I think like just like I think like maybe $50 because you're paying when it's a repro. I've got a lot of these. What you're paying for is the materials. Basically, this person is making a case and a cartridge and everything from scratch for you. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can play the mod for free online. But it's like, well, this hangs out on my shelf most of the time. I hardly ever mess with it, but it's a cool shelf piece because
Mm.
again, they went to the trouble. They did the full art front and back. Putting
Hmm.
her in the deal.
Wow.
You know, they really went all out. Like I've found just the cartridge itself very easily for like $10 or less, maybe even. But I wanted this whole deal. Oh, what is no instruction manual, but just the cartridge itself. So
Yeah,
yeah,
'cause, I mean, it's like what, Sonic 1 or Sonic 2? Which one of the?
it's Sonic 1. Yeah, it's Sonic 1. So, but yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, if I had to pick a least favorite character by default, I guess it would be Antoine, just because, you know, they really tried to make him too annoying at times. Like, he comes off much better in the comics. In the cartoon, he's very one note. There's the time when they're torturing him by cooking French food wrong, like crepes and shit like that, and that's his torture and everything, and it gets a little too silly. But again, that was a mandate. That was the studio thing. But I don't know. It didn't work for me, brother. But yeah, Antoine, he didn't really get his best shine on this show. It was in the comics, he came off much better. Like later on, he was much less cowardly and more brave, you know, and competent. But that came like way later. If all you're going by was this cartoon, then yeah, I've seen him show up on a lot of lists as like worst cartoon sidekicks and shit like that. So not a lot of love for poor Antoine out there, but what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
But he's Rob Paulson, so you got to at least have some
Some respect
favor, you
for
know?
him. Yeah. Johnny,
What
is
about
there
you,
a
Johnny?
character that's what now?
Oh yes,
I was saying, what about Johnny?
What I was trying to say earlier is that I don't really remember the cartoon that much. I don't remember the characters that much. So the only people I do know is obviously Sonic and Tails, which is, you know, disappointing that Tails didn't do much in this version of the Sonic cartoon.
You didn't even
It
go on.
did-
You didn't even go on YouTube to catch up.
Huh?
You could have just gone on YouTube for an hour, catch up real quick.
Yeah.
Now, it's a
Yeah.
hard show to come by because the DVDs, I got them when they came out. They're really expensive now. And again, they didn't rerun the DVDs even. So it's like, I think it's available online. But yeah, it's a hard show to find now even.
I think in streaming services, if I'm not mistaken, I think if you have like the Roku player or something like that, I think I could still watch. I think I've seen it somewhere that they have the
Yeah.
Sonic cartoons.
If
I
you
just
have
to
the Pluto
log in.
TV, there's a Sonic channel that's like nonstop. The Sonic, that one, the Saturday morning one, and Sonic Underground, just nonstop. Sonic.
So where do I go for that one?
I
Where
would
do I
Pluto
go?
TV.
I would think that because this show had the least number of episodes, that it would be the easiest one to get re-released on DVD format. But there's got to be something with the rights going on because Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, the rights to that changed hands multiple times. I have the Shout Factory DVDs, but Adventures, you can find that at Walmart today. Like you can go buy the whole series of Adventures of Sonic. You could buy the whole Sonic Underground series on one set now. So those shows have changed hands a couple times and been re-released, but this one, the Saturday morning one, it had the Shout Factory release and no discs after that. So it's got to be something with the rights because it's only 26 episodes. They could put out a single disc for nothing, for $20. They just don't. I don't know why. That was my point. I don't know why they don't bother.
You know, ever since as a kid, when this show was brand new, it was just something about it. Like what you guys say, maybe the episodes were aired out of order. It's just way too early, you know. I felt like, yeah, the show obviously would have worked better. Maybe, I don't know, they put it at a better schedule or something like that because...
At least more consistent schedule. At least consistently on pick a time and stick with it.
And then also have like the licensing to actually afford to repeat the show to air reruns more often because it's more, I think it's like that other, the Adventures of Sonic, that one seemed to be like aired a lot and rerun a lot. And it's, you know, it's a weekly cartoon, so there's no chance to miss it. But the Saturday morning one, it's like a really good cartoon. It's a good looking cartoon. The art looks good. The theme sounds pretty badass. Robotic sounds more like more sinister. But yeah, it's just bad that I don't know all all the shenanigans behind the door, it's what made the show not really last that long. Yeah, I don't know. I think it was just a little all over the place.
I loved the art, the way it was drawn, the colors. I thought all of that was like really. It was darker than the games, but it fit the story that the show was trying to do. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So now let's get into that third cartoon.
Real quick. We'll wrap up on this because the Adventures of Sonic cartoon, that had a game. Now, we can't talk about the Saturday morning show without addressing the fact that it didn't have an official game, but it was supposed to.
Yeah.
We did talk about how the Spinball game had the cameos, Sally, Bunny, Rotor, and Mutsky. They appeared in Spinball during the bonus game. You could rescue them. But there were at least 2 separate individual attempts to do an actual Sonic game based on this show, and they both got canceled, unfortunately. But yeah, it was in the pipeline. There was a side-scrolling action platformer that was called Sonic 16. Unofficially, that's what it was on paper. That's not what the game would have been called. But if you go online, you can find this very easily. It's been on the forum that we go to. It showed up there in the past. I've seen the video. I don't know if you guys have, but it's out there. If you look it up on YouTube, just look for the Sonic game based on the Saturn cartoon. It'll pop up. It's definitely slower paced than
That's the first
Sonic
thing I noticed.
What's that?
That's the first thing I noticed. Slower paced.
It looks kind of like a Mario game, really. It's got some stealth elements. It's got some light platforming. Again, definitely wouldn't have been a traditional Sonic game, but it would have been a good adaptation, I think, of what the show was. So I still would have liked to have seen them complete that, but it's definitely worth looking up if you haven't seen it. And then there was a project in the works called Sonic Mars, where Sally and Bunny would have been playable characters. And that never got off the ground either. So, and then they never took a third swing. So they had 2 strikes, but they didn't even swing for the third one. So they struck out looking.
Now, were those going to be for the Genesis or later on, like for the Saturn or whatever else?
I think they would have been. They probably. I know at least the first one would have been the Genesis one, because I'm almost positive that's what the thing online, the video. I think that was a Genesis demo or some shit. It looks cool for what it is. I thought it looked really cool. I would have played it.
Wasn't Sally also pick up on that one? I think that's why it was slowed down, because Sonic would be the only fast character, like the others wouldn't.
I mean, maybe. I don't know how far either of those 2 games got in development, but yeah. So it was supposed to have at least a couple games. Sally is definitely the most popular character who never showed up in any of the games.
Yeah.
And she's got her whole fandom, and that's, whatever it is. But, she's like the most notorious character out of the whole thing. And
the wars between Sonic and Sally versus Sonic and Amy.
The Amy thing is creepy because she's way younger and she was president of his fan club, and that's just a whole can of worms. There's just the power dynamic doesn't work. And, she wasn't created to be his girlfriend. She was created to be a fangirl. Sally was created to be the girlfriend, so that's the end of it. It's very simple. Lana Lang was not created to be Lois. She was created to be the other woman. That's her dynamic in the story. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, I definitely think when characters are created to fulfill a specific purpose, I feel like you have an obligation to at least honor that and let them fulfill that purpose. Where would we be if somebody who just really hated Lois Lane just decided that Superman didn't need to be with her? It's like, you could do that.
52, Wonder Woman.
You don't want to, I'm sure they had some interesting stuff to say, but it's not what I want to say.
Yeah, I know.
And it's not what they were created to do in the first place. It's a fun little what if thing. I'll say that. It's a fun little what if thing. But yeah. That was, that'll pretty much take it on to the next level just to wrap it up. Yeah, that was my favorite. Before we even move on, I could say easily, it's my favorite by far of the 3 Sonic cartoons. And it's not even close, frankly. I guess the Adventures would be my second favorite, but again, it's like the gap is huge.
Yeah. So then we had a couple of years later after the fact, we had Sonic Underground, which again, Sonic was voiced by Jaleel White. And check this out, Johnny, because I think you never heard of this before now, but check this out. So in this version, Sonic has a long lost brother and sister. I think the name was Manic and Sonia, right?
Sonya. It's
Oh,
pronounced Sonya
that's weird pronunciation for it.
instead of like Sonic.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
notice that myself. It's spelled Sonya.
But spelled Son.
I heard them say it every time they said it. It was Sonya.
Oh, wow. So they're all voiced by Jaleel White. So yes, you got Jaleel voicing, girl character.
That
And
was a choice.
the weird plot line was that Robotnik, I'm not sure, I think he did conquer the world there or not, I'm not sure. But Robotnik is the dangerous enemy. He looks exactly the same as he does in the Saturday morning cartoon. It's very confusing because he's voiced by someone else now and he acts a little more goofy, but the design is exactly the same. Sonic's mom is missing somewhere, but it's part of a prophecy. Like the three kids were raised by different people. I think Manic was raised by someone who taught him how to steal. So that was his gimmick. He's a good pickpocketer. And they all play music. They all have to someday reunite and join forces and stop Robotnik. And at the same time, Robotnik has two bounty hunters that are visual, incompetent, stupid bounty hunters to go after them. And one of them is voiced by the guy who voices the Brain, which took me forever to figure out. But where have I heard that voice before? Pinky the Brain. The guy who voices Brain was one of those. I think it was Dingo, wasn't it, or the other one? I know one talked and the other one kind of didn't talk, but he could transform into whatever the plot needed him to transform into.
No, they talked, but the one was smart and the other one was stupid.
Mm.
Like the big one was dumb. The Dingo, he was dumb.
And it was just perfect because he voiced Brain and he got to like monologue all the evil plans they're going to be doing and whatever. So
yeah, that was yeah. So in this one, which the comics actually ended up in one issue of the comic, they acknowledged this as an alternate parallel universe, alternate timeline. But yeah, so in this universe, Sonic's mom was the queen, and Queen Alina, and Robotnik took over, and he basically he left all the rich people around to pay tribute to him, and he turned all the poor people into robots.
No, God. Oh, wow.
Yes, so this show gets a little political now. He kept all the rich people around so they could pay him tribute and so he could feel like a big shot. And he turned all the poor people into robots.
I'm done. Goodbye. I'm done. I'm done with Sonic.
I'm not gonna vote for Robotnik.
I mean, who knew, right? I mean, this is why, this is why you can't let somebody back on the ticket for 2020 whatever. You can't do it. But anyway, so
I'm done. Sonic,
make
this to me.
great again.
make Robotropolis great again. But yeah, he was so it was an interesting twist on the story because now it's a little political. But yeah, so she had to the queen had to give up her kids because it was prophesized by the Oracle of Delphius that one day when the kids were older, they were going to reunite with their mom as the Council of Four, and they're going to combine their powers and overthrow Robotnik. And so in the meantime, that she had to give them to other people to raise so they could grow up. So yeah, Manic grow up. He's a thief and a pickpocket, and he doesn't have any special superpowers. Sonic is Sonic. He's pretty much the same as he's always been, except now he's really good at guitar, and wears a necklace, a pendant that turns into his magic guitar, and that's his superpower. And then there's Sonya, which you definitely want to say Sonya, but it's canonically Sonya. She kind of still grew up upper crust, sort of. Like she was sort of well-to-do, a bit of an elitist, well-off family, so to speak. And she plays keyboards, and she has photographic memory and strength powers and all that kind of stuff. So they each bring something to the table. And in every episode, before the episode resolves, they all jam and they do like a musical interlude, which kind of harkens back to the old Gem and the Holograms cartoon from the 80s, if you remember that shit.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
The closest thing I can fucking compare it to. Because it's like, it's a Sonic show for 18 of 22 minutes, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere, hold on, let's stop everything to shoot a music video. And then we're going to wrap this up real quick in like a minute and a half. That's how the show works. So,
now, was there any behind the scenes reason of why they made the show and like that, and like were they really running out of ideas? Like, I don't care, put us on a cartoon. We got no idea. I don't care, put us on a cartoon. Like,
well, Deke, part of it was Deke wanted another swing. Sonic, the other two shows had been off the air for, they came out in 93 and were done by 94. This was 99. So we're going on almost 5 years without a show other than the one shot, the Christmas special. So Deke wanted back in the game. And at the same time, Sega had the Dreamcast coming out in September of 1999. So they wanted some kind of Sonic project in animation to sort of work as a promotional tool just to raise awareness of the Sonic brand. Didn't have to tie in with anything going on with the game or anything. It's got the least to do with the games of any other Sonic cartoon. It's got nothing to do with Sonic as far as the games, other than Sonic's in it.
Tails wasn't even in it. I just remembered.
Knuckles was in it, but that was it. And Uncle Chuck, but he was more from Saturday morning cartoon anyway. But yeah, so yeah, it was kind of rushed out. The point was simply be different from the other shows and get a Sonic show on the air for the summers because the Dreamcast is coming out in fall. That's really what it came down to.
Wow.
So
And that's probably like the last form of Sonic media before he went to the Green Eyes new design. Because even the Archie comics kind of went with the Green Eyes design. And
yeah, because I mean, I have this came out right around the same time. This is one of the first Sonic figures for the Sonic Adventure game. Another company reissued these. These came out at least twice, I think, but this was an original one.
oh, wow.
Yeah, this was an original from like 99 or 2000. So yeah, I got the whole set of these, I think. Sonic, Tails, Robotnik. I got a Knuckles. I think he was from the other series though. But yeah, anyway, so yeah.
I still remember the cover of BGM with Sonic with the new look. Everyone just had like these big ass hands, long ass arms. They're all doing like the signs and whatever. Like
green eyes and the buckles on the shoes.
Yeah.
Big things, but I dug it. It was fine by me, brother. But yeah, he didn't have it yet, son of a bitch. He didn't have it yet in Sonic Underground. He still had a standard animation look, but
Yeah.
that's the show I watched the least, I can't lie.
One thing I do want to buy, I think it's still available on eBay for not insane price, but Burger King had a deal one of these some time ago. Their Burger King, whatever they called it. I know it's a Happy Meal. I don't know what the Burger King version of Happy Meal is.
Kids meal. Burger King kids meal.
There you go. So they had Sonic 3 at the time. So you could buy like Sonic, Knuckles, Tails, but you had Robotnik, and Robotnik's a little Eggomatic, and he looks like his Adventure Sonic the Hedgehog. And I got to get you one of those, Johnny, one of these days. So you can have your old little Robotnik thing in your in your apartment. I hate that hedgehog.
I think I actually have that thing. I'm positive I have that somewhere.
Yeah. But I'm surprised, like I said, that it's not like, $500 or some crazy price like that on eBay. It's still like a decent price.
Yeah, I think they're around for a decent price. I think I've seen them. All my stuff's falling over.
Are we getting the gamer cauldron? What do we got here? Oh, a Robotnik toy.
I hate that hedgehog.
Yeah, I was watching this show in its earliest run, but I didn't watch it for very long. So this is the one that I have the least memory of for sure.
Yeah.
I didn't really watch this show very much. I watched it more catching up on it today, I think. We watched a couple of the early episodes.
That one I just remembered EGM, or one of those, either EGM or GamePro, talking about how it's coming soon. It's a brand new show called Sonic Underground. We had zero idea what it was about, just the name. But I think I only saw it after the fact on YouTube or whatever, but cool theme song though. The plot's all over the place and compared to like the actual games, but like the theme song.
I mean, some of the music ain't bad, but I'd argue that there's times when the background music on the show isn't bad, but like the stuff that they will play during the musical interludes where they start jamming out, like their music video segments, a lot of times that stuff is terrible,
Yeah.
but the actual music in the episodes will be really good. Like in one episode I saw, like it was during a climactic fight scene and they started actually briefly having like a heavy metal riff in the background. It sounded almost like Megadeth. It was like just this weird little guitar thing, and it was so cool. But that was before the music video part, and then that was like awful shit.
Now,
So it's all over the place.
aside from Jaleel White, where there's anyone noticeable like voicing? Oh yeah, well I guess I forgot his name. The name who voices the brain again?
Maurice LaMarche.
Yeah.
Thank you. So
Yeah,
aside from him and Jaleel White, was anyone else noticeable or?
Well, Brian Drummond was somewhat notable. He played Knuckles. Gary Chalk was Robotnik. So Jaleel White playing all three characters was a choice because his voice for Sonya was like, ugh.
I know. I do know, what's it called? Brian Drummond, I think he voiced Vegeta one time in Dragon Ball before we got Sabat. And I know he voiced Ryuk on Death Note, the Death Note dub anime, but I forgot what other roles he's done over the years or whatever.
Then we had, it was an okay show. It had its run. I want to say it had a full 65. Let me check my notes.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it had 40 episodes, so it came close. It had 40 episodes. That ain't too bad.
Wow. Well, now that one was also every Saturday or something, right? I don't see that one as being every week or
that was syndicated, but I think because it was syndicated, I don't think it was necessarily daily. I think it just aired whatever the deal was.
Wow.
But yeah, that one has the worst reputation of the three shows.
I know. I mean, one was kind of like the game mixed with Looney Tunes. The other one was based more in the comic anyways. And, but this one was just like, what the fuck? Well, who?
Yeah, they totally plucked this one out of the air.
I want to be in that meeting room where it's like, okay, the boss said he wants a new Sonic cartoon. There's no new game coming out. Guys, ideas. What y'all got? You know what I mean?
Like in a vacuum, I want to say it's not necessarily terrible. I think if there had been no other previous shows, it might have been fine as its own thing. Because the little bit I watched of it wasn't necessarily terrible. Just parts of it were bad. But the story is interesting. The animation is the art and the animation is the most advanced and sophisticated. Of course, by this point, it's 5 years later, so you'd figure techniques would have advanced. So yeah, they did good with that. They reused some of the art style from the Saturday morning show. Robotnik looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
It looks and feels more like the Saturday morning show than the other show. But yeah, totally different universe, totally different story, totally different characters, totally different everything. I remember that was supremely disappointing to a lot of people at the time.
Oh, yeah.
At the time,
I can't imagine, like, new Sonic cartoon coming out. Oh, boy. And you watch, what's this? Like,
more than anything, people wanted something that either finished the Saturday morning show or was similar and used a lot of the same characters or something. The feeling was there was no point in having these characters around if you weren't going to utilize them. Like this was now the established canon. Remember that. There were no games coming out in the late 90s. So the comic book canon, that was Sonic canon at that point. That was it. That's all you had. So they were like, why are they fighting it? Why don't they just make a new show that either wraps it up or is similar vein or something? So this coming out pissed a lot of people off. Yeah. A lot of people were they hated it before they even saw it. I can't lie. I had no enthusiasm for it. I will say that. I was not for it. It's okay though. I will say that. Like being objective, it's okay. I don't hate it. It's not what anybody wanted at the time it came out. Nobody wanted this show. if you're open-minded enough to give it a chance, you could have some fun with it. Definitely my least favorite of the three.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure it's like most people's least favorite, I guess.
Question. You say you can have fun with this one, right? Fun as in you can make a drinking game out of it, or
No, it's just like, it's not a terrible show in and of itself. It's just, it makes a lot of it doesn't really justify its choices. Like, its premise is outlandish compared to that of the other shows. And it really has no strong reason to exist as it does, and it doesn't really make a case to justify itself. But it's not a bad story, and it's not badly done. There's nothing bad about it. It's just not at all the cartoon anybody wanted. It's fun in the sense that if you could just be completely objective about it and look at it as its own thing, it's a very watchable show. But
that's fair.
there's just nothing that really makes you want to watch it versus either of the other shows, unless you really like the idea of Sonic being in a crappy rock band.
So I guess it's sort of like going by a game here, a 90s Sonic game here. I guess it's sort of like how people kind of crap all over car, mainly for the soundtrack. But I love the soundtrack to that game. The game itself is crap, but like I said, as a standalone CD from that game, it was a bad choice. It was an odd choice for a racing game with that soundtrack.
Yeah.
But mainly because they were trying to like show off the capability of the audio, which is why they did those kind of tracks to begin with.
What game was that?
But Sonic R.
Oh.
I love that soundtrack. And I said, anyone that hate that, like, don't like the music, screw you. The music is fine. It just isn't right for a racing game. But as a standalone, it is good to me. It's just indicative of the time. I was listening to it actually through this whole cast, honestly. So it was my background music for this. So, but I guess it's sort of like underground.
I do wonder if the idea came from the ground up because, like you said, Dreamcast is coming out, or if it was one of those like random story ideas they had lying around for some show that was so. Yeah, we'll use that. Just slap Sonic and Robotnik on it. Boom,
the biggest consistent criticism of Sonic Underground among people who say it's a bad show, and this is, I can't disagree with it, it feels like it's the plot of like 2 or 3 shows crammed together, and then, oh, by the way, it's a Sonic show.
Yeah.
Like it could be any other, like the whole thing with the Queen and the 3 kids, and they're separated and they have to come together, and the prophecy and the deal, and all it is happening. Like, it's not a bad story, but it's jammed, right? And it's got fuck all to do with the fucking video games. Like, it has nothing to do with
that's like some other series. That's like other series where you watch it and say, okay, this is obviously meant to be something else. Or even some games, if you play a game and you realize like how weird the stories are, like it doesn't really fit. It's like, well, obviously this was meant to be something else. They just slapped another title on, or they reskinned the character or something.
It's not terrible by itself. It's just, it is what it is. Like, I would recommend checking out a few episodes to see it for itself, because it's gimmicky. Again, every episode they got the music video episode segment, which is, some kids I'm sure look forward to it, like very young children, so it was gimmicky in that regard, but the animation was good. The music was generally good, just not the songs they came up with for those segments, but the background music was very good. The art was very good. There's nothing bad about it, other than it's not the Sonic cartoon anybody wanted to watch. It's not very adjacent to anything Sonic that you would know, so there's no real reason to watch it over any of the other ones. That's the worst thing you could say about it. I don't agree with a lot of the negative consensus, though. Some people say it's just a flat-out bad show. I don't really think it is. I don't think any of them are specifically bad. I think they all do good things and bad things, but I think this one doesn't really justify itself well, considering how strongly its premise deviates from the norm as far as Sonic canon. It's still far
Another thing is that it helped bring in Jaleel White because it probably would have been downright crucified if it was some other Sonic actor back then. So at least that kind of had that going for it, I guess, sort of.
I kind of wish he didn't voice Sonya though, because like it's hard to take her character seriously. Like she's like,
but to be fair, oh gosh, I don't believe in referencing this. But anyway, Jaleel White did voice. I mean, not voice on Family Matters. Yeah, he did. He was Myrtle Urkel, so
yeah, but it's like there's a couple things that I have. It sounds like a dude doing a girl voice, very stereotypically. I'm making fun of girls kind of voice, so it's kind of grating in that respect.
So Myrtle Urkel.
Without the country, without to it,
I just said Myrtle Urkel without the draw.
Like
that boy butters my biscuits.
his Sonya voice, it's very stereotypical. Like this is a boy doing a jokey girl's voice kind of voice. So it didn't land for me. But then also, and this was something I was surprised to notice, but it's definitely something that happens in the cartoon. Several characters, notably Dingo, the henchman, several characters note that Sonya is supposed to be an attractive female character. And now you could take or leave that as a viewer, but in universe, she's supposed to be an attractive girl. That's canon. That's what the characters say. But I don't think the voice sells it. Like, because it just doesn't fit, Because like, who'd want to hear that when they wake up? Like, I'm ready to scrambled eggs. It's like, I don't know. I almost wish, I understand why they had him voice all three, but I almost wish they had a girl voice the girl. But that's, I don't know. Sometimes I'm a little old.
Also, what about Manic? Does he sound any different? Like, if you close your eyes, can you tell which one's Sonic, which one's Manic?
Yeah, barely. Like, he does it a little bit more younger and high-pitched. I noticed, like, he brought his Sonic pitch down for this show. He brought Sonic's pitch down a little lower, and Manic is a little bit higher. Because he's supposed to, like, be the little brother kind of role. So he's the thief, and he's the mischievous one. Sonya's, like, a bossy female. Yeah.
Now, did they ever, like, since the show's, like, 40 episodes, and I would assume they were not expecting a second season. Did they wrap it up though? Did they actually bring the mother back and all that, or did it end in a cliffhanger?
Not. They didn't quite get there. No, they got close. They didn't actually wrap it up to conclusion. Point of fact, actually, an issue of Sonic Universe, which was an adjacent comic book, a spin-off comic.
Yeah.
The Sonic cast in the Archie book became so large at one point that they created Sonic Universe to kind of be a book more about the supporting cast.
Yeah.
Sonic was still in it, but the rest of the world would be showcased in the Sonic Universe. So sometimes what they would do is they would either do 20 years later storylines, or they would explore some of the parallel Sonic universes. So issue 50 of Sonic Universe was originally scripted to be the finale / epilogue of Sonic Underground, where they were going to wrap it up once and for all. But for some reason, they canceled it. This would have been like sometime around like 2007, 8, I think. So the speculation is that they killed the story simply because it had no relevance at all to anything going on in the video games at that point. So it was like the show was not very well received or well remembered. So by like 2008 or whenever that was, people were like, the editorial staff, allegedly, there's no like confirmation on this, but allegedly they were like, why do we want to drag Sonic Underground back up? It's like nobody gives a shit. So they ran a Metal Sonic story in that issue instead, because they figured it would sell better, which it probably did, but they were going to wrap it up in the comics is the simple answer. They just didn't get a chance to. But the show did have a legacy that outlived the show, because in the Sonic comics, they had a few storylines that took place 20 and 25 years later that show Sonic and Sally married with kids. And in that future timeline, Sonic and Sally's kids are named Sonya and Manic. So
That's interesting. I do remember now one thing to note about like how long the comics lasted was one time Johnny and I and our dad, we were in Mexico City because my dad's family was in Mexico City. So we went to this bookstore. We would try to visit every time we would go visit because it was one of those stores. It was a regular bookstore, but they had a little section that actually had American comics and not like, the Spanish translated ones when, we were home in our area. So I would see a Sonic comic and it'd be like issue 125 or an issue 152. I mean, dude, this thing is still going? What the fuck? Because of course that was before the internet. If internet was around, I would have known. But I'd be like, dude, what the whoa? And I think this was after they defeated Robotnik because he was fighting against like other made up villains and stuff like that. But it just boggled my mind that it was still going on for that long. Like, holy crap.
The real in-universe Robotnik in the Archie comic got killed off relatively quickly.
Yeah, I remember that part. That was
issue 50 was where the real Robotnik died. And then after that, it was his parallel dimensional doppelganger.
Yeah.
Because they visited in the comics, they visited early on a parallel universe where Robotnik had won. And he killed all the roboticized all the good guys. And like he was threatening to come in the regular dimension. Like he was so evil, his own universe couldn't contain him. So Sonic and everybody had to team up to fight this ultimately more evil version of Robotnik. So they sent him back to his own dimension. But then after they killed Robotnik, this other Robotnik from the parallel dimension came over and kind of just usurped his place, picked up where he left off.
Yeah.
So,
but the funny part, of course, the clever part was he was like a AI or something like that, like robot bodies or whatever. So they destroyed his...
He'd roboticized himself as a desperate last bit gamble.
Yeah.
To beat Sonic once and for all, and it happened to work.
Yeah. But the thing is, they destroyed his body, and before he would completely, die or go offline or whatever, he would put his consciousness, I guess, into another robotic body. And what a coincidence! It looks like the Dr. Eggman design from the new Sonic Adventure game and everything,
He's basically kind of like Cyborg Superman because he could like just jump his consciousness into different bodies and shit.
Yeah.
He's just not as prolific in the use of it because he keeps coming up with these goofy ass looking fucking, Sometimes he looks like Jim Carrey, apparently.
Oh, God. But yeah. Well, another thing is, I think maybe the first couple of times they would still call him Robotnik before it just became Dr. Eggman. But after the whole Genesis Wave thing, it got kind of retconned to like it was always Dr. Eggman they were fighting, that kind of thing. One thing I do remember.
Question. I'm just wondering, as a kid playing the original Sonic games, was I not the only one who actually did call him Eggman even before the cartoons or anything like that? Because I always personally did because he was shaped like an egg.
Well,
I always thought of him as like, oh, he's like an Eggman. I used to say it as a kid. And then years later, finding out that was the original name, I was like, wow, okay.
I just read Robotnik in the instruction manual, so.
Oh, yeah, of course. No, I mean, I knew it was Robotnik, but while playing it and seeing him, I said, dude looks like an egg. So I just randomly just call him that,
Yeah. Now, another thing was, what was I going to say? Here. Oh man, I love my train of thought there. Oh yeah, I remember. One of the things that stood out to me the most was when Robotnik and Wily worked together in that comic book crossover, which by the way also crossed over into issues of Sonic Universe, so you wouldn't have to wait that long between Sonic Universe and Mega Man. They captured Dr. Light, and once Wily revealed that Dr. Light is usually the one that foils all the schemes and keeps giving Mega Man upgrades or whatever. They were like in a flying fortress or something. Robotnik or Eggman flat out went to the cage, got Light out and threw him out there to his death and everything. And it was pretty emotional. I mean, on one side, Wily was like, what the fuck? What'd you do that? Well, you said use your enemy, right? Dude, like, I want to like humiliate him and show off that I'm his superior. I don't want to flat out kill him. What the fuck, And it was, and with Sonic though, it's emotional. I mean, Mega Man was emotional because that was like, who he sees as his father. So it was really like, please Sonic, save my dad, because he couldn't make it in time or whatever. So that was pretty. But I still like the little difference that Eggman is just fucking ruthless in comparison to Dr. Wily, even though they're both bad guys and whatever. But like,
it was a cute crossover. I mean, I wasn't a fan of like why they had to do it, because again, the plan was to reboot the series in a way that a lot of people were not thrilled about. But I mean, for what it was, I thought it was a neat crossover. Like, I liked what they did, but like, the real world why of it affected me and annoyed me. I wasn't a fan of what we had left over after the reboot. So, but the crossover itself in a vacuum was cute and clever. I thought that was good. One of the things that sucked about the whole deal, though, was that in the comics, by that point, they were in the middle of a storyline that had been running for a while, where Robotnik had finally managed to capture Sally and turn her into a robot.
Yeah.
And she was basically like the main villain at that point. Like, she was ruthless and deadly and dangerous, and like, she was like his nuke, basically. Because it worked on two levels, because it was going to emotionally torment the heroes, and also because she was like a shit talker too. Like, Amy would try to get up on her and be like, "Don't you remember we're friends?" You're like, "We were never friends," and then just like fucking backhand her or some shit.
Oh, God.
Like, she was very ruthless and dangerous, and so it was a controversial plot line because again, people love this character, so it had potential for intrigue, and it was kind of executed well. But with any storyline like this, you also think, well, what's the end game of this? How are they going to go back on it eventually? Like, how are they going to get back to normal with her?
Yeah.
Especially because they established very early on, like after he turned her into a robot, Robotnik put a lot of upgrades and shit onto Sally. So basically a bunch of her parts got moved around and rearranged. So even if they could turn her back to normal, she'd be a mangled mess. So you can't turn her back to normal. So they made that a point. Like, we can't even turn her back to normal. So obviously they were probably going to figure out a way to undo it later on. But because of the reboot, they didn't get a chance to resolve the storyline.
Yeah.
The crossover thing started with her still an evil robot and Sonic's most dangerous enemy. And then the Genesis wave happened. And then it was a reboot universe where none of that shit had ever happened. And Sally's normal and everything's whatever. So it's like, okay, you get her back, even though she's not really the same character, but whatever. But it was like, you had this big 2-year plot line, and you want to see it resolved, and you will never know how the fuck that was going to get resolved.
Yeah. I remember because that was a free comic book day issue where one half was, what was Sonic doing before the thing started, which had Mecha Sally in it. And the other side was like how Dr. Wily found this thing and contacted Eggman, and what Mega Man was doing before he also got warped. Because the world was like a weird combination of the actual Sonic games and the Mega Man games and everything. So
it was cute. I liked the gimmick. I thought they did the gimmick well. I just like the politics of it all they left a sour taste.
Yeah.
But like I would have loved it if the circumstances were totally different, and the whole point wasn't to take this world and these characters that I've been following since I was 10 and just tear it up and throw it away and start over. If that wasn't the entire point of doing the crossover, I would have loved the fucking.
Yeah. And also,
I thought they did good with it. I just didn't like why they did it.
Yeah. Did they do a thing where for at least an issue or two, Sonic was kind of like had the mental whatever, because he said memories of the old world and Sally and now like all that stuff.
The characters had like their new memories were kind of like superseding and overwriting their old ones, but like when they touched, they would like remember the old world and everything. Like Sally remembered being the robot and everything like that, and she kind of had a breakdown real quick and everything. But then, like, over time, things just kind of settled, so that shit just kind of went away.
Yeah.
So, like, the memories of the new universe took over, so,
That's the kind of shit you don't think about. Like, imagine in the real world, we had all these, like, different lives and shit, and now we're here and we have like memories of our past selves, and they're slowly vanishing until all we remember is how it is now. You know, like I don't know, like a world that where COVID never happened, and
I
maybe
mean, thanks
we had
to
a late
fucking
night talk show every night or some shit. I don't know.
thanks to fucking Ken Penders, you know, that's why they had to do the whole deal with the reboot and the whole. But yeah, I mean, it was what it was. You know, it was. The good thing about it was that in the lead up, though, a lot of those old plot threads that were unresolved, like when Ken Penders left and a new writer came on, the funniest thing was he took all the stuff that had been left hanging for 10 years and finished it off in like 6 months.
Yeah. Well, that's another reason why I got wiped out too, because Pembers wanted to get paid for every time any new writer, whatever they would use his crappy characters or whatever, or
They weren't even necessarily crappy characters.
well, I
It's
mean
just,
the other ones, the extra ones, the extra echidnas. I mean, I got no problems with Scourge. Scourge was cool. What was that Fox girl's name? She was cool. Fiona Fox, like some of them were cool. But you know what I mean? Like he wanted to get paid. He wanted to get royalties every time any writer going forward since the lawsuit would use those characters. That's why Archie wiped them all out. It's like, okay, you won, you own them. Guess what? They're gone now. We're gonna wipe them out.
he overestimated the value of what those characters would be worth because his grand plan was he was going to use them in his own comic/animated feature thing that never happened.
Yeah, that too.
Nobody cares about it without the Sonic and Knuckles branding.
Yeah.
Like specifically, he's got this echidna storyline he says he's always wanted to do. And it's like, more power to
And
you.
he spelled echidna all weird just so that it wouldn't be like, even though that's kind of, I mean, there's still animals that exist. You can't copyright echidna as a word, but
It's petty and it's stupid, and he's a small man, and he did have good ideas. You know, like he created a lot of good characters. He had a lot of good plot lines. He wasn't good at resolving them. I give credit where credit's due. People owe him a lot, but he overvalued his creation, and he went to very petty lengths to sustain ownership of it to a point where, well, he can't use them because nobody wants him to use them. They have no meaning outside of the Sonic universe,
yeah.
and now nobody can use them. So it's like it's in this limbo where it's like, okay, so everybody wins and nobody wins. Good for you.
Everyone got fucked.
Good for
But
you.
the ones who got fucked the worst are, like you said, the fans that grew up with the characters since they were 10 and so. Then those are the ones that really lost.
I mean, they were the Sonic characters for those lean years before Sonic Adventure came out, where there were no fucking games to play.
Yeah.
If you were a fan, this is what you had. You had the comic books, and you had to make do with that. So even a lot of people who didn't watch these cartoons, that was Sonic Universe to them. So it was hard to watch all that go away, you know, especially if you were like me, you were there from the first issue and you were invested in it. But that's another reason why of the shows, the Saturday morning one was always my favorite of the three. For that reason, you know, you had the cast, the characters, the same basic story. There was a good synergy to it. It was like taking the comic book and bringing it to life. And from people of a certain age group, you know, you couldn't do better than that.
Yeah.
Maybe
I
not
got an
everything-
interesting question there, Roxx. Just kind of compare with the Sonic. Like we've already kind of established that Sonic started off with the game, the cartoon characters, a bunch of made-ups to make up for that big gap, and then the adventures characters, right? Like, how would the Turtles have played out if they did something similar in the Archie comics, where they had all the 80s characters, we got this big gap between Next Mutation and 2003, and like, how would it have worked out if the Archie comics just kept going? Or do you think it would have somehow put Hun in there and, I don't know, kill Shredder, bring him back as a robot, or you know, like...
I mean, it's tough to say because with the Archie Ninja Turtles comic, they seemed really adamant about doing their own thing.
Mhm.
Like, they seemed really... They did bring Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady back into it a little bit, Krang a little bit into it. But, like, if you go back and you read the Archie Turtles comics, it's shocking how little those characters appear, considering they were in almost every episode of the cartoon.
Yeah.
Most people think they were in every episode of the cartoon because they were in it so much. They weren't in every episode, but they were in almost every episode. So, despite that, if you read the Archie Turtles comic, Shredder, Bebop, Rocksteady, Krang, they show up very little at all. And it's very spaced out after the first batch of issues.
Yeah.
So it's weird. And there was a little bit of stuff very early on. Like they put the Knucklehead or certain other of the vehicles in the comic just because they were in the cartoon or they had a toy. But that stopped really early too. And just because new characters appeared in the show and the video games, they didn't always appear in the comic. So it is really hard to say if they kept going with the Ninja Turtles comic, if they would have put other characters like Hun and so forth. It's possible, but I don't necessarily want to say probable. The Archie team definitely like to do their own thing. It seemed like they would always rather establish their own characters because that's where the Mutanimals were, right? That was their own creator-owned thing, which unfortunately they literally murdered when they couldn't get an animation contract.
Yeah, I remember that.
But
But even then, like you didn't see Shredder in them, but you still had like Slash, Leatherhead, Mondo Gecko. I think, oh god, even Murdude made an appearance.
Yeah, they still had some crossover a little bit, but a lot of the characters were very different. Like Leatherhead was a totally different character.
Oh yeah, definitely.
In Archie, he was totally unique to Archie. He had nothing to do with either. He basically turned babyface immediately.
Yeah, I know. He was like designed based on the the toy, but he didn't act anything like the toy character.
Yeah, and he was a hell of a pro wrestler too, apparently.
Oh yeah. Oh, A-Stuck from Planet Perduffus.
Crying Hound.
Oh yeah.
El Misterio.
Oh, I love that.
El nombre El Misterio.
I love how I guess because not everyone knows Spanish, but it should have been obvious because the dude was always saying my name is Crying Hound, my name, whatever. So when he was El Misterio, yo soy El Misterio, he kept saying that. Some person in one of the writer columns actually asked, what the hell does yo soy mean? Like,
I was dying.
yeah. I still like how Donnie beat Raphael with wrestling or whatever, doing all like the clotheslines and shit. And Raphael's like, how the hell did you learn all that? Books, man.
But yeah, it was a magical time, man. It was cool. It was cool, but also kind of a bummer because Archie had both the Turtles and the Sonic comics going at the same time for a few years. And I know a lot of people would have loved to see that fucking crossover.
I don't know how that would have worked, though.
Never did officially. There was a panel. They show up just off panel during a gag strip in one of the early Sonic comics. Like Sonic's like chasing him off panel or something like.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because it was like different rules of the comic and stuff, and like no stupid crossovers. Get out of here, beat it, turtles or whatever.
Dude, we're just trying to help.
Yeah.
Other than that, they didn't appear. Or like I think there was one time when they were in a sewer, and they made some kind of joke.
Yeah. Yeah, back then they were so popular. Any other cartoon that would be in the sewer would use like that kind of. I remember the Toxic Crusaders, they would always use that stupid line of hideously deformed creatures of superhuman size and strength. They would always use that all the damn time. So one time they were in the sewers and it's like, what are we, why are we here or something like that? And the guy was like, well, it was good enough for mutants on another cartoon show. It should be fine for, hideously deformed creatures of superhuman size and strength or whatever. Like,
I'm going to pivot that right back to Sonic Underground. Just because I feel like it. No segue. Just, we're just turning the car around.
Okay.
I can't even fucking drive, so you're in trouble. But no, one thing that was interesting is that it's the only one of the 3 Sonic cartoons that had Knuckles in it.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty interesting. Like, the show itself is not very well or fondly remembered, but it's the only one that got to use Knuckles, so that's cool.
Yeah. I'm sure some people, like even the haters back then, like if they found out, oh shit, Knuckles gonna be, they'll at least check it out and see his portrayal. I'm sure.
Yeah, he was sort of crushing on Sonic's sister, Sonya. He had a little bit of a thing for her. Like at one point, like there was an episode he got tricked into betraying them, and then like he felt bad, but he's like, but I feel really bad for her. So it was like kind of implied.
So he was in there more than once. Or...
Yeah, he was in there a few times, but there was like twice he got tricked into betraying them, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of sort of.
I had no idea. I was gonna say I had no idea Knuckles was even in the show, but for me personally, I didn't even know this show existed until like maybe like a couple years after the fact. Then I heard there was another Sonic show, and I always wanted to see it, only because it was Sonic. But and I never actually looked into it. I just know it existed. I knew the premise. Even with the premise, I thought it was kind of odd, but they said it had music. It had like a music theme to it. So maybe one day I'll check
Let's
it
just
out.
try to be gemming the holograms for a hot minute.
Yeah.
Worked before. But, the music wasn't especially all that good or memorable. But, what's interesting, though, just for the sake of being cool, the original Shout Factory DVD sets for that show, Sonic Underground, I forget if it was 2 or 3 volumes, but the Shout Factory DVDs came with a CD of all the songs from the show. So that's cool. Like, that's a cool little bonus to throw in.
Poster, I guess.
Yeah, the newer releases don't have it. So I have my season 1 is a newer release. My season 2 is an older release. It comes with the CD. So something cool to have, some neat memorabilia.
The coaster
I like
for your soda,
Shout Factory is always good for going the extra mile like that. They put out those bonuses. That's why, they did all the Mario, the Zelda, the Captain N, the Sonic stuff. Shout Factory, they did all of them before anybody else did, and their sets are still the best in my opinion.
Mm.
They got all the best extras and behind the scenes and just all of that stuff. Take you underneath, show you the underneath what's going on behind the scenes. I dig that shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I had to pick one though, if I could only watch, I'd still take Saturday morning's show, 26 episodes. I'd still rather rewatch those over the other 2 shows. That's just my pick 'em. I do binge watch it like once every year or so. I try to watch all of them. You get through it. You start it on Friday. You get through it real quick.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's a good time to kind of wrap it up there. I think we kind of covered all. For me, I kind of want to say, I don't know, because the thing is, as a kid, I loved Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog more than this one, but as an adult, I'll like that one, mostly because I like the zany energy, but again, it didn't age well. It's too noisy, crazy, insane, and annoying, and whatever. So I would probably like the Saturday morning one better. Not sure about Sonic Underground or whatever. Johnny, are you curious at all to watch Sonic Underground, or which show would you prefer?
Very experimental compared to the other 2 Sonic cartoons. I mean, I guess under my own risk, I'll watch Underground if I feel like watching it.
Hey, it's on TV. Yeah, you could binge watch it on Pluto TV, just the Sonic channel.
Yeah, but definitely for me, even though the Sonic Adventures is cheesy as
I see it there.
F, it still holds a place in my heart because it was I guess the Sonic cartoon I remember the most, and I was probably, I was younger than you, so for me it was hey, it's a fun kiddie cartoon, But
oh God, zoom that in. Let's see Robotnik on that one.
Super cheesy, super whatever, but it is what it is. I think it still came out at a good time. It makes Sonic games more popular because now you're definitely gonna play Sonic, even with the cheesy cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
The Saturday morning cartoon obviously is a better Sonic cartoon in general. And it's it kind of gets you that feeling that the cartoon was really good, but it had it was just a little all over the place. It was not managed correctly, but now that you could actually rewatch it again. Now I guess your streaming services or whatever, it's kind of worth rewatching it again. Just to really understand fully what was that cartoon was really about. Because in the time period, it was kind of dare-ish, but now you actually have time to actually rewatch it and actually enjoy it entirely. And the cartoon does have a superior aesthetic. It has a better artwork. The soundtrack's pretty awesome. It just has like a more realistic, more like a serious feel to it compared to the other, cartoony Sonic. And for Underground, it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know about that one. Yeah.
I think
Either way, it was so good. It was so a good time for Sonic. All the cartoon shows and the games and all that. And
yeah, I mean, it was a good time before things fell off at the end there for a couple of years. But yeah, I think all three shows are worth looking at and being objectively critical and judging on their own merits. I think all three of them are worth going back and revisiting, and I think they're all fun to be had in their own ways. I think the Saturday morning one objectively is the easiest one to watch all of it. Like, there's only 26 episodes, and it doesn't even really give you time to get sick of it. I don't know how many people would want to watch 26 episodes in a row of either of the other two shows. Like, I think they're worth watching, but I think people after like maybe 8 episodes of Adventures might be like, okay, I'll come back to this like in a month or something like that. Like, I think it's hard to sustain the momentum because of the manic pace of it. I think it wears you out a lot faster.
Yeah.
Between that and the lack of overall arc to the story, it becomes, a little bit, there's no stakes to it. You feel like if you don't watch it, you're not missing anything. So it doesn't like draw you in to keep coming back to it. You put it on for an hour, you have fun with it, you're like, okay, I watched that. Whereas, the other two shows, even Underground, like there's an arc there. The storytelling in those two shows was much more serial and much more draw you in with the plot. So there was advancements made there. So they all do good in their own ways, but I definitely think that the easiest one to rewatch in large number would be Saturday morning. But I definitely do recommend watching all.
And Jupes, your favorite, even though you haven't seen all three, just in general, or?
Well, seeing as how I can only compare it between not Underground, but Adventures and the Saturday morning one, I would like to say the Saturday morning one because Adventures, that felt more like I watched it out of habit than anything else, but I was actually invested in the Saturday morning one. I mean, my time, energy, I really, really look forward to that. Sonic on the weekday mornings is something to watch before I went to school. I hope I missed the bus and Dad will just let me stay home so I can goof off for the day or something. But that usually never was the case because the rule around here was unless you got something broken or you got a fever, you're going to school. That's why I had perfect attendance.
But it was on. It was on before school. I watched it. I think we all pretty much had the similar experience with that. I mean, hey, regardless of favorites and which one we watched more or less or the other, it was a good time to be a fan between these shows, between the comic book, most of the games coming out were good. They were getting fewer and farther between, but, there was a lot to enjoy, and that was huge. So I definitely look back fondly with these shows. I'm glad that I was able to get these first-run DVD copies because they're amazing. Very blessed to have been able to get those. But they're easy to find other versions of these shows except for the Saturday morning one. That's easy to find online, I think, but not the DVDs. The other shows you can find cheapish out there. I've seen the newer sets of the Sonic Underground stuff even going for pennies, so it's good stuff. I definitely recommend revisiting these shows from time to time because, especially if you were there, there's a certain way that they hit. Just like the Mario shows, we talked about that. If you weren't there, they probably don't hit the same. But if you were there, it doesn't even need to be explained. You just see it and you remember. It's like, oh, fuck me, man. I remember that shit. And you can't say that about the fucking Free Willy cartoon. Why they would fucking put that on over Sonic, nobody remembers that fucking
Well, what
shit.
would it even be about? You know what I mean? Like to make a consistent episode thing of like...
Kid and the Whale would have adventures. I don't know. It's stupid. It ran for like fucking one season and nobody remembers it. They would put that on instead of this fucking thing. Fucking Free Willy.
Oh, God. All right, guys. On that note, I think we also all we could say about Sonic. We actually got another hour or two, but we'll give mercy on you guys.
Fuck the whale.
at Jupi's I don't know, suggestion, insistence, both. We might someday come back to Sonic X and Sonic Boom, although I gotta watch some of those to get those because those are more like later in the decade. But yeah,
I'll have to get way caught up because I gotta say, like, as you can probably figure out, my investment as far as Sonic characters goes has mostly been with the comics and the Saturn universe. So it's like once things started getting away from that, I started drifting investment-wise, my emotions. So I didn't really watch those shows, but I've always been curious to. So I wouldn't mind talking about them, but yeah, I don't own them. I've seen very little, but I wouldn't mind getting caught up.
Sonic X had 3 seasons, and I don't know the airing was a little weird in Japan because I think it took a while for they ever aired season 3 even over there. I don't know what the dub is like, but I heard the dub sucks, and I've never seen it. I've only seen the Japanese version, and I liked it. There's some things I didn't like, but I did like a lot of the game references. I mean, it was Sonic Adventure references, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Battle comes to mind because I used to like that game. And a few more other things. But the Sonic Adventure 2 stuff is really in there.
Yeah.
And then the third season was more original. It was very Tails focused, which I liked. But there's a character in there that a lot of other people like that I personally thought was boring I found boring, but that's just me. But
I mean, I remember the show being on. I just didn't really watch it that much, but I've always been curious about it. I just, I wouldn't mind getting caught up on it. I remember looking for DVDs of it back in the day. It was like really hard to come by, so I never got caught up. But I heard it's easier now. I think they redid it or something.
I heard it was a thing where in Japan, like some of the cops and stuff were using actual guns and bullets while the cartoon made it like, lasers or some shit because,
because they had the gun organization, what's his name's uncle, I think was a cop or something. I forgot. But yeah, they used real guns and Sonic guys saying shit a lot. In the Japanese version, because I know the Japanese voice actor too, so I know him from other works that he's done.
But yeah, we could do those shows, and also we're not done with the 90s though, as far as video game shows, because we flipped a coin. This one came first, but we are going to at some point go over some of the other 90s video game shows, like maybe Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, stuff like that. We can't leave those out of the mix.
The Mega
Donkey Kong Country
and Donkey Kong Country cartoon. Oh, and Earthworm Jim. We forgot about Earthworm Jim, so we'll get that.
Yeah. See, that one I got to get caught up on. But see, the Sonic link there was Katsuse because she was Princess Sally, and she was also Princess What's her name.
Yeah.
So she was everywhere back then. She was usually a princess, whatever, like you called her.
Yeah.
So yeah, we got to do those on an upcoming episode. So that'll round out our 90s video game trilogy series.
There we go. All right, guys, and that wraps it up for
just ask Zack Snyder. Theme is important.
I'm sorry, the theme song is stuck in my head again. The Donkey Kong Country themes, I always liked it.
There we go, guys. So yeah, stay tuned because we'll be coming back to those 90s video game based cartoons and check them out. And they're, quality.
Well, of course we will. I just said so.
Very good quality, right?
I just push you on the spot because I said we're doing it, so now we have to.
Yeah, of course. There we go. And of course, we can't deny Jupi, the Donkey Kong Country cartoon and everything. I probably will not rewatch that. I'll leave that up to you guys. But I'll be watching the Mortal Kombat and all those, But anyways, guys, on behalf of everyone here, this is Mark Rodriguez signing off for tonight.
Okay, me and my Sonic Kitty says, see ya.
And me and my buddy here, we're going to go take a hike. And we will see you next time. This has been Rikki Roxx, the God of Thunder, Lord of Rock and Roll, icon of old school, and Sonic fan extraordinaire. Happy to be here on the podcast. And that leaves only one man, the one who no one can follow, the incomparable, impregnable, one and only Mr. Electricity himself. Take us home. Drive the bus. It's your time, brother. It's your spotlight. Bring it to an end, as only you can do, Daddy. Tell us who you are.
And this is Johnny Rodriguez. See you next time.
All right. See you next time, guys.